The city had always been alive with whispers. Its streets were filled with stories of power, betrayal, and secrets that never stayed buried for long. Vito Moretti was one of those secrets. A man whose name sent shivers down the spines of everyone who heard it. He ruled over the city with a cold, iron fist. His Mafia empire stretched through the dark corners of the world, untouchable, unstoppable. But despite all his power, there was one thing he couldn't control. Her Elena Rossi had left him once, and that was something Vito would never forgive. She had been his everything, his love, his fire, his weakness. But she had betrayed him, running away with his child, disappearing into the shadows where he couldn't find her. For years he had searched, his anger simmering like a storm waiting to break. Every night, his thoughts would circle back to her. Her dark eyes, her soft touch, and the way she had looked at him with love before everything had fallen apart. Vito never believed she could truly leave him. She had to return eventually. She was his. And now, finally, he had found her. The news had come to him like a thunderclap. Elena, the woman who had torn his heart apart, had a son he hadn't known existed, his blood, his legacy. Vito had been furious, hurt, and yet, in some strange way, he felt a strange sense of triumph. The world had kept him from her, but now it had delivered her child straight into his hands. The child that belonged to him. Vito had always believed that power was the only thing that mattered. Control, money, respect. But now, in the face of Elena's betrayal, he found himself battling a new force, something far stronger than anything he had ever known. His heart. He didn't want to admit it, but it was there. He wanted her back. He wanted them back. Elena had spent years running, hiding. Every moment of her life since that night she had fled from Vito's grasp had been spent in fear. In quiet desperation, making sure that her son was safe from the world that had once consumed her. It wasn't easy, but she had done it. For him, she had promised herself that she would never let him know the truth. She had tried to shield him from the darkness of his father's world. Her son, Luca, was the light of her life, the only thing that had ever mattered to her. Every time she looked at him, she saw Vito's eyes in his face, but she also saw her own. She saw the boy she loved, the boy she swore to protect from the dangerous, cruel world that had once threatened to swallow her whole. She knew Vito would never let them go. The Mafia, the power, the need for control, it all ran too deep in his blood. She had made a decision long ago. No matter what, she would never let her son fall into his hands. The knock on her door came late one evening, sharp and loud. Elena froze, her heart sinking in her chest. She didn't need to see who it was. She knew. She had known this day would come. With trembling hands, she opened the door. And there he was. The man she had once loved, the man who had broken her heart and ruled over her life like a shadow. Vito Moretti stood before her, as handsome and menacing as ever. His eyes, cold and hard, swept over her, and for a moment there was silence between them. "Elena," Vito's voice was low, rough with emotion. "You think you can hide forever?" Her breath caught in her throat. She tried to steady herself, but every part of her body screamed at her to run, to keep running, but it was too late for that. "I didn't hide, Vito," she said, her voice shaking despite herself. I left for my son's sake." Vito stepped forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "You think you can keep him from me?" he asked, his voice filled with something darker now. "He's mine, and you will never escape me." Elena swallowed hard. "He's just a child, Vito. He doesn't belong to anyone." The smile that twisted across Vito's lips was not kind. "He belongs to me, Elena. Both of you belong to me." The words hit her like a blow, knocking the air from her lungs. She stepped back instinctively, but there was nowhere to go. The door was shut. The walls of the tiny apartment around her suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. Vito looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I've spent years trying to find you," he said softly. "Years, and now you're standing here in front of me like nothing ever happened." Elena's chest tightened, but she refused to show weakness. She had made it this far, and she wasn't about to let him tear it all down. I don't belong to you anymore, Vito. I left that life behind. You don't get to leave, Elena, Vito replied, his voice darkening. You can run all you want, but you will always belong to me. And so will he. Her son Luca was asleep in the next room. Elena's heart broke at the thought of what would happen if Vito ever got close to him. The danger, the manipulation, it was all too much for her to bear. She had spent too long hiding, running, and now it felt as though the walls were closing in on her once again. Please, Vito, she said, her voice quieter, filled with desperation. Leave us alone. You've taken everything from me. Don't take him too. Vito's gaze softened for a split second, but the hardness quickly returned. You think I want to hurt him? He asked, almost disbelieving. I want him to be with me. I want my son. Her throat tightened. He's not your son. He's mine. Vito stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. He's both of ours, Elena. And you will come back to me, whether you want to or not. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The tension was thick, like the air before a storm. Elena felt the weight of Vito's presence like a suffocating force around her. She knew he wasn't going to leave. He would not give up. Finally, Elena found her voice. I won't go back with you, she said, her voice firm despite the fear that gripped her chest. Not without my son. Vito's eyes darkened. Then we do this the hard way, he muttered. And with that, Elena's world started to spin once more. The walls she had spent years building to protect her son, to protect herself, were crumbling, and Vito was standing in front of her, claiming what he believed was rightfully his. The following days passed in a haze of dread and uncertainty. Elena felt the weight of the decision she had made bearing down on her with every passing hour. Vito's presence in her life once again was like a shadow that she could never escape, a constant reminder of everything she had worked so hard to leave behind. His words echoed in her mind, his promise that both she and their son belonged to him. But Elena wasn't the same woman she had been when she had first fallen for him. She had been naive, caught in the dangerous allure of his world. She had learned the hard way that there was no room for love in Vito Moretti's world, only power, control, and fear. Luca was everything to her. The little boy she had brought into the world with love, her son, her future. She had sworn to protect him from the life she had once been a part of, a life filled with violence, manipulation, and darkness. A life that Vito ruled over with an iron fist. Vito wasn't used to being denied. Everything in his life had always been his to command. The Mafia had been his empire, and his every wish had been met with the kind of loyalty most men could only dream of. But Elena had left him. And even after all these years, that betrayal still burned in his chest. She had taken his child, and she had tried to erase him from their lives as though he were a mere mistake. He couldn't understand why she had done it. Why she hadn't come to him when she found out she was pregnant. Why she hadn't trusted him, even after all they had been through. As the days passed, he found himself watching her from the shadows, his gaze always on her. He had never felt this kind of uncertainty before. Elena had been everything to him once, and now she was the one thing he couldn't control, and that made him want her more. One evening, when the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, Elena and Luca were sitting in the small living room of their modest apartment. The quiet hum of the outside world, nothing more than a distant murmur. Elena had managed to keep Luca shielded from the darkness for so long, but she could feel the tension rising in her chest. The storm that Vito had promised was coming, and she didn't know how much longer she could keep them both safe. She was just about to call it a night when the door opened. And there he was again, Vito. His tall figure filled the doorway, his dark eyes scanning the room before they landed on her. He had the same cold, calculating look that always sent a chill down her spine, but there was something else in his eyes now. Something she couldn't quite place. Elena, he said, his voice low. I didn't come here to fight with you. I've already made that mistake. Elena didn't say anything, her heart racing in her chest. She stood up from the couch, keeping herself between Luca and Vito. Her son was still too young to understand the danger, but Elena knew the world Vito lived in too well. You shouldn't have come here. Vito, she said, her voice firm, though she could feel the tremor in her hands. "You said you'd leave. I'm asking you, please leave us alone." Vito stepped further into the room, his eyes softening for just a moment as they landed on Luca. "I'm not here to take him, Elena," he said, almost gently. "I'm here because I want to make things right." Elena's chest tightened at his words. She had heard that before, and it always meant something else, something darker. "I don't believe you," she replied, shaking her head. "You don't know how to make things right. You only know how to control." Vito's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. "I know you think you're protecting him. But this world is mine, Elena. It always will be. He belongs here with me. And you—" He paused, his gaze flickering toward her. "You belong with me, too." Elena took a step back, feeling the walls close in on her. "I'll never go back to that life, Vito. I've told you this before." His eyes flashed, a storm behind them. "I don't want to force you back. But you're wrong if you think I'll let you both live in peace, hiding from what's mine." He turned his gaze back to Luca, who was now watching them quietly from the couch. "I'm not asking for much," Vito continued, his voice suddenly softer, almost pleading. "I want us to be a family. A real family. No more running!" Elena's heart pounded as she looked at him. The man standing before her was still the man she had once loved, the man who had promised her everything. But he was also a man who had destroyed her world, and now he wanted to destroy everything she had worked so hard to rebuild. "I'm not running anymore, Vito," she said, her voice filled with determination. "I'm fighting for what's mine." He stepped forward then, closing the space between them. His presence was overwhelming, the air thick with unspoken tension. "And I'm fighting for you," he said softly, almost as if to himself. Elena's eyes filled with a mix of fear and sorrow. She had been fighting for so long, but she could feel herself beginning to crack under the pressure. She loved him once, and a part of her still loved him. But there was no place for love in his world. Only darkness. "I don't want this, Vito," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I just want to keep him safe." Vito paused, his gaze flickering to Luca once again. His shoulders tensed, and for a brief moment, Elena saw a flicker of something that looked like regret in his eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. "I'll keep him safe, Elena," he said, his voice low and determined. "Both of you. You don't have to be afraid of me. I'm not going anywhere." Elena didn't know what to say. She couldn't trust him. Not after everything. Not after the years of pain and lies. But she also couldn't deny the part of her that still ached for him, for the man she had lost. "I can't go back to you, Vito," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "Not after everything." Vito's eyes softened, and he took another step toward her. "Then come forward, Elena. Come forward with me. Let me show you that I can be more than what you think." For a moment, silence fell over them. Elena's breath hitched as she looked into his eyes, seeing the raw vulnerability there. It was the same man she had once trusted, the same man who had hurt her. But this time she wasn't the same woman. "I can't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Vito's face hardened again, but there was no anger this time, only a deep, aching sadness. "Then we'll do this the hard way," he said quietly. Elena's heart sank. She knew what that meant, and she knew deep down that the storm had only just begun.